This video discusses the resumption of the Hamas-Israel war and Iran's role in it, and the downing of a US military Osprey aircraft near a Japanese island, and how it could ignite the Third World War very soon. Hello friends, this is Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini, where I provide unique analysis of world events based on the unmasked truth that after surrender, Germany continued World War II clandestinely and became a killing machine. I also provide true news that you will find nowhere else. First, let's be clear about who will fight the Third World War. The USA and British Commonwealth nations have no incentive to fight a war with anyone. We have all the resources we need for our food, energy, and industrial requirements and use them to help as many nations as much as possible. But most employers cannot find enough people to employ in their businesses in the United States. Therefore, our economies are doing reasonably well. China, on the other hand, has started experiencing economic problems and youth unemployment at an estimated 25%, but could be higher. The only way China can realize its dream of being the dominant economy and country in the world is by dethroning the United States. Not an easy job by global economic competition alone. The alternative is to conquer the United States, which is the incentive for China and its ally Germany to start a war with the United States and Britcom nations. Germany has never needed an incentive to start a war. They are convinced that they are a different creation than the rest of humanity. They believe they only are divinities in human bodies and it's their right to rule everyone, as the rest of humanity has been created merely to serve them. They will make any alliances to achieve their satanic, misguided, delusional goal of ruling over the entire world. To achieve their goal, China and Germany would like to take over the lands and resources of any countries they like. However, the United States and Britcom nations will not let them do so. That's why they must fight these nations first. That's why the Third World War by Germany, China, and their allies must be fought against them. The hottest spot in the world currently is obviously the Hamas-Israel war. The temporary week-long ceasefire in the war between Israel and Hamas has ended and hostilities have resumed. Hamas released 110 hostages, of whom 81 were Israelis, and the remaining hostages were foreign nationals. Israel released 240 Palestinian prisoners, all women and teenagers, 3 times the number of Israeli hostages released by Hamas. As part of the deal, badly needed humanitarian aid was allowed into Gaza. Though fighting has resumed, humanitarian aid still continues to flow into Gaza. One feature of the temporary truce was that fighting against Israel by the Lebanese Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, attacks by Iraq and Syria-based Iranian Shiite proxies against US forces also stopped. Only the Iran-supported Houthis in Yemen continued attacks against Israeli and US targets, though at a reduced level. This is clear evidence that all these terror groups are supported by Iran, as they all acted in concert to temporarily pause the hostilities. A resumption of hostilities was started by Hamas. It still holds about 137 hostages, which includes 226 Israelis and 11 foreign nationals. Hamas has stated that no other hostages will be released until the war with Israel is over. Meanwhile, Israel has stated that its goal of destroying Hamas still stands. Israel also plans to assassinate all Hamas leaders around the world, including Yahya Sinwar, Hamas leader who masterminded the current attack on Israel, and the billionaires Ismail Haniyeh and Khalid Mashal, worth an estimated $4 billion each, and Musa Abu Marzouk, worth $3 billion, much of it looted from aid provided by the United States and other governments. They want the war between Hamas and Israel to become permanent and want other Arab governments to support Hamas, while they have little desire to govern Gaza. It's hard to predict the turn the war will take. The fact that Yahya Sinwar has indicated that no further hostages will be released until the war is over and restarted the hostilities indicates that Iran likely urged him to restart hostilities. He probably would not have restarted hostilities unless he had been assured that the conflict would be widened by Hezbollah, Iran proxies in Iraq and Syria, and the Houthis in Yemen mounting attacks on Israeli and US targets with greater intensity than before the truce. Houthis are already doing their part. They attacked 3 commercial ships with missiles in the international waters of the Red Sea on December 3, 2023, US military officials said. According to reporting by ABC News in a statement, the Houthis said that they had targeted 2 of their commercial ships because they were linked to Israelis and had rejected warning messages from Houthi forces. The Houthis said in a statement that they will continue to prevent Israeli ships from navigating the Red and Arab Seas until the Israeli aggression against our steadfast brothers in the Gaza Strip stops. The US response to Israel's war is troubling for me. I understand that Palestinian civilian casualties should be minimized, and Israel is doing all it can by issuing warning to civilian populations before it attacks through the social media and leaflets where internet access is non-existent. But Hamas fighters embed themselves with the civilian population, including in hospitals, leaving no choice but to attack them wherever they can be found. Moreover, Hamas continues to launch rockets into Israeli civilian population. But the US pressure on Israel is incessant, with the US President, Vice President, Secretaries of State and Defense stating in international forums that Palestinian civilian deaths are too high. Israel certainly is being hampered in responding to further Hamas attacks by the US position, despite doing its best to minimize civilian casualties, which are certain to rise as it goes after Hamas fighters lodged among the civilian population facilities. Bloomberg.com reported on Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's remarks, who said Israel risked strategic defeat in its war with Hamas if it fails to heed warnings about the mounting civilian death toll. I have personally pushed Israeli leaders to avoid civilian casualties and to shun irresponsible rhetoric and to prevent violence by settlers in the West Bank, Austin said in a speech to the Reagan National Defense Forum in Simi Valley, California, on Saturday. Austin's remarks came as top US officials have grown increasingly vocal in their warnings to Israel about the death toll in the Gaza Strip. These warnings, previously confined to closed-door meetings, have been thrust into the open by mounting pressure from Israel's Arab neighbors, human rights activists, and opinion at home, including the left of President Joe Biden's Democratic Party. While Austin and other US leaders have vowed to continue supporting Israel, they worry that American support could become untenable if civilian casualties continue to mount. During a trip to Israel this week, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that the punishing campaign unleashed on northern Gaza shouldn't be repeated as Israeli forces move south after the end of a multi-day ceasefire with Hamas. Another worry for me was the US President's remark at a news conference after a 4-hour meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping during the APEC 2023 summit in San Francisco, asked if he still thought Xi was a dictator. President Biden said that he had not changed his view that Chinese President Xi Jinping was effectively a dictator. Look, he is. He is a dictator in the sense that he's a guy who runs a country that is a communist country that's based on a form of government totally different than ours. President Biden said. In response, China's foreign ministry said it strongly opposes the remarks. Its spokesman said, "This statement is extremely wrong and irresponsible political manipulation. It should be pointed out that there will always be some people with ulterior motives who attempt to incite and damage US China relations. They are doomed to fail." When the remark was made, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken visibly winced. "I felt that this was just another pretext given to Xi Jinping to justify China attacking the United States." Meanwhile, the low-intensity conflict between the USA and China continues. Evidence is the crash of the US Osprey aircraft near the island of Yakushima on November 29, 2023, with 8 on board. While one body has been recovered and the remains of 5 others located, 2 are still missing. After 4 days, the 2 are likely dead as well. A Department of Defense spokesperson said the crash happened while the aircraft was performing a routine training mission. The truth of the matter is that this aircraft was also brought down by China. The USA will most likely retaliate in kind, though China will not publicize it. But in this case, also China was signaling to its ally Iran that it has its back and will directly engage in conflict with the United States if it attacks Iran. Now, while it is hard to predict what turn the Hamas-Israeli war will take, here is a possible scenario according to interpretation of Bible prophecy made by the German mass grader prophet Gerald R. Flurry, head of the Philadelphia Church of God, on whose interpretations the German mass graders and the Germans rely. It shows how Germany might intervene in the war. If the Hamas-Israeli war widens into a regional conflict with the involvement of all Iranian proxies and others, Hamas in Gaza and the West Bank, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, proxies in Iraq, Iran, and the Houthis with Iranian forces embedded with them, the conflict will be impossible to handle for Israel. With the USA constantly pressuring Israel to avoid civilian casualties, Israel may conclude that it may not be possible to rely on the US government under the effective control of German mass graders. It may feel compelled to consider other offers of help, such as from Europe headed by Germany, to deal with all these adversaries and as guarantors of peace. Germany may then agree to send forces to guarantee peace. Hamas will capitulate because the Palestinians have always been allied with Germany. Germany may attack Iranian proxies in Iraq and Syria, who will likely surrender quickly and be conquered. The Houthis may be similarly attacked and will likely be subdued quickly. Germany will also deal with Iran based on its response. Thus, Europe will have conquered the region and brought peace to Israel. To guarantee peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians, Germany will likely negotiate the presence of German forces in Jerusalem and Israel. That scenario is predicted by Gerald Flurry based on the sequence of end-time events according to the Church's understanding according to God's Church's understanding in the days of Mr. Herbert W. Armstrong, through whom God founded the modern era of His Church, known as the Worldwide Church of God in His days. Germans pay very close attention to prophecy. It is to their advantage to do so, as God of the Bible prophesies the defeat of the UBI, that is United States, Britain and Israel nations by a German-led alliance. That's why they want to adhere to prophesied events very closely. The sequence of events predicted by Gerald Flurry is based on the prophecy at Daniel 11 verses 40 to 43, which state, "And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north, which will be a German-led alliance, shall come against him like a whirlwind with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships. And he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. He shall enter also into the glorious land which is Jerusalem, and many countries shall be overthrown. But these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab and the chief of the children of Ammon. He shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. But he shall have power over the treasures of gold and of silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be at his steps. In Gerald Flurry's view, Iran, the head sponsor of global terrorism, is the king of the South. According to the sequence of end-time events interpreted by Gerald Flurry and Herbert W. Armstrong, the war between the king of the South and the king of the North takes place first, before the UBI nations are attacked and defeated by the German-led Global Alliance, consisting of nations mentioned in Psalm 83 verses 1 to 8, which I will discuss shortly, among other nations. I received a message delivered through an angel which said that Revelation 8 verses 6 to 12 describe the conquest of the king of the south by the king of the north mentioned in Daniel 11 verses 40 to 43. In the sequence of end-time events, this takes place when the UBI nations have already been defeated and are experiencing the Great Tribulation. This is seemingly contrary to what Mr. Armstrong and Gerald Flurry believe. Mr. Armstrong was a prophet as stated in Malachi 4 verses 5 to 5. Also an apostle who was given understanding of prophecy more than any man in the history of mankind except Jesus Christ. Therefore, I cannot lightly dismiss or ignore what he understood about prophecy. But God has also given me the status of a prophet as stated in Deuteronomy 18 verses 18 to 19, and also gave proof that he delivered messages to me through angels. The proof was that the first message delivered to me was that Sainis of India are Jews. Then God revealed to Queen Elizabeth II that I was also a descendant of King David, who was a Jew. Therefore, I stand by the message God delivered to me. But today, for the first time, the realization came to me that the revelation to Mr. Armstrong and me are equally valid. It is possible that there could be a dual fulfillment of the prophecy in Daniel 11 verses 40 to 43 in the end time. In the first fulfillment, Germany and its allies have a confrontation with Iran and its proxies. Then during this Great Tribulation, Germany and Europe's Middle Eastern and Black African allies, as predicted by me based on other prophecies, as described in my free ebook World and Bible Prophecy, available free on my religion website www.churchofgodmessage.com. Then during the Great Tribulation, Germany and Europe's Middle Eastern and Black African allies rebel against the German rule, leading to an attack and their conquest. I have stated many times that there are generally surprises for us in exactly how prophesied events are fulfilled. Prophesied events give us the precise milestones, but we are generally surprised in how we get from one milestone to the next. Therefore, I am merely describing a likely scenario based on what Mr. Armstrong believed and the message that was delivered to me. But the milestones of prophecy, such as King of the North defeating King of the South, defeat of the UBI nations, the Great Tribulation, God's intervention in human affairs in the last 1 year of the 3.5-year-long Great Tribulation are certain. It will be very interesting to watch and see how the prophecy in Daniel 11 verses 40 to 43 is fulfilled. Now let's see from current events how Germany and China are preparing to fulfill these prophecies. The goal of the Germans, Chinese, and their allies is conquest of the United States and Britcom nations and Israel, called UBI nations. Prophecy in Ezekiel 5 verse 2 indicates that conquest will be preceded by an economic siege of these nations to weaken them, which will also ignite a civil war between German masqueraders, who are people of German ancestry living in white countries, and their allies and against the whites of non-German ancestry. Ezekiel 5 verse 2 states, "You shall burn with fire a third part in the midst of the city when the days of the siege are fulfilled. And you shall take a third part and smite about it with a knife, and a third part you shall scatter in the wind, and I will draw out a sword after them." Burning a third part refers to Ezekiel burning all his hair in parts to indicate how various portions of UBI nation's population will be destroyed in their defeat and slavery. To facilitate an economic siege, German masqueraders and their allies have to be willing to halt manufacturing activity, impede delivery of health care, disrupt imports and exports through America's ports, derail trains, sabotage the electric grid, use arson to and set fires to residential and commercial properties, disrupt air travel, and create chaos in society in other days. They're willing to do all that because murderers among them, numbering in the tens of millions, are being put to death almost every day as they are still committing crimes. All the German masqueraders are fully armed with guns and other sophisticated assault-style weapons and are well represented in the military and law enforcement. A deadly shooting civil war will erupt between the two sides. According to my understanding of prophecy, I have stated that Germany will lead a European alliance with Arab and Africans allied with them, who will also participate in the siege against the UBI nations. As events are taking shape in the Middle East, many black African nations in civil war turmoil are becoming allies of the Chinese and Germans. Those heading terrorist organizations will easily become allies of the Western and Chinese because of the possibility of plundering the wealth of others and eventually taking over territory and ruling and establishing their rule. Major Arab and African nations that will take part in fulfilling these prophecies are mentioned in Daniel 11 and Psalm 83. In Daniel 11, we already identified Egypt, Libya, and Ethiopia. The nations that will escape are Turkey, identified as Edom, and Jordan, identified as Moab and Ammon. Now let's look at the nations considered as part of the alliance mentioned in Psalm 83 verses 1 to 8. Do not keep silent, O God, do not hold your peace, and do not be still, O God. For behold, your enemies make a tumult, and those who hate you have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against your people and consulted together against your sheltered ones, which will be God's church in the place of safety. And they said, Come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel, including UBI nations, may be remembered no more. For they have consulted together with one consent. They form a confederacy against you. The tents of Edom, that's Turkey, and the Ishmaelites, that's Arabs. Geography includes only Saudi Arabia in this prophecy, though I include many other Arab nations such as Egypt, Libya, UAE, and Yemen in the coalition. Then Moab, South Jordan, and the Hagrites, Syria, Gebal, Lebanon, Ammon, North Jordan, and Amalek, Palestinians, Philistia, Palestinians, and the inhabitants of Tyre, Lebanon. Assyria, Germany also has joined with them. They have helped the children of Lot, who were Moab and Ammon in Jordan. In my April 24, 2023 video titled Third World War Update, What Does a Likely Full-Blown Civil War in Sudan Mean?, I described how China has instigated the civil war by promising to make the Rapid Support Forces leader General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, commonly known as Hemeti, as the head of the government in Sudan, asking him in return to be their ally in controlling the Red Sea shipping. That is what I stated in that video about China's activity about the Red Sea nations. China faced a threat from Somali pirates in 2005. Now it has a naval sport facility in Djibouti. It now holds a control Sudan and Port Sudan. The purpose in controlling Sudan under the leadership of General Dagalo is to use him and the Sudanese military and naval forces to control shipping through the Red Sea, with Sudan functioning as a pirate nation. Perhaps even Somali pirates will be allowed to cooperate under the control of China and Germany, and be selective in preventing shipping bound for and from America and British Commonwealth nations. China already has an alliance with Iran and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia and UAE support General Dagalo. Iran controls the Houthis of Yemen. Thus, if China can help General Dagalo take control of Sudan, then it completely controls the shipping passage through the Red Sea, including the Suez Canal. According to the Middle East website, China's Maritime Silk Road (MSR) is an integral part of Xi Jinping's Belt and Road Initiative. The Suez Canal, Red Sea, and Gulf of Aden are essential to the success of the Maritime Silk Road and consequently to the Belt and Road Initiative. This largely explains why China located its first and so far only foreign military base at Djibouti near the narrow Bab el-Mandeb passageway between the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea, has invested so much in port and warehouse construction, and stepped up its economic and political engagement in countries on both sides of the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden. Egypt represents a major concentration of Chinese port and storage, financial construction, and investment. China's COSCO Shipping Ports Limited has a 20% stake in the Suez Canal Container Company, located on the Mediterranean end of the Suez Canal. Hutchison Ports operates Egypt's two main commercial ports at Alexandria and El Dakhila. Japanese has become the biggest investor in the Suez Canal Area Development Project. Thus, China has substantial control of the Suez Canal, as it also controls the Panama Canal's terminals at both ends. China has built and controls the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka, from which it can control the shipping in the Indian Ocean. Clearly, China has maneuvered very well to be in a position to lay an economic siege to the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel. That's what the war in Sudan is about. Since then, the war in Sudan has proved to be deadly. According to the Council on Foreign Relations, the conflict has killed more than 10,000 people and displaced 5.6 million, 80% of whom are internally displaced, and hundreds of thousands of whom have fled to unstable areas in Chad, Ethiopia, and South Sudan. It still continues unabated. Now, besides controlling the Suez Canal through investment and construction of port facilities, China's relationship with Egypt have warmed in recent years, with Egypt set to become an official member of the recently expanded BRICS group of emerging economies in January 2024. In a meeting in October 23 between Xi Jinping and Egypt's Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli, Xi Jinping said, China congratulates Russia on joining the BRICS cooperation mechanism and believes that this will inject new impetus into BRICS cooperation. The countries set to join the expanded BRICS nations are Argentina, Ethiopia, Egypt, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. Except for Argentina, the other 5 nations are the nations prophesied to be part of the alliance between Daniel 11 and Psalm 83. Iran, through its proxies, already controls Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and Palestinians. While China is working with the Middle East nations to form the prophesied alliance, Germany is laying the groundwork for other sub-Sahara African nations to join the alliance at some stage, according to my interpretation of prophecy. German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier recently visited Tanzania and Zambia, bolstering diplomatic and commercial ties. While in Tanzania on November 1, 2023, Steinmeier expressed his shame at crimes committed during Germany's colonial rule in Tanzania and pledged to raise awareness of the atrocities in his own country. I would like to ask for forgiveness for what Germans did to your ancestors here, Steinmeier said during a visit to the Maji Maji Museum in the southern city of Sonjia, according to a transcript of his speech. According to experts, between 200,000 to 300,000 members of the indigenous population were brutally murdered during the so-called Mahi Mahi rebellion, mostly as a result of the systematic destruction of fields and villages by German troops. While Steinmeier was carrying out his charm offensive in Tanzania and Zambia, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz visited Nigeria and Ghana. In May 2022, he visited Niger, South Africa, and Senegal. While I'm not setting any dates for the Third World War to start, God's church understands that God often does his work in 19-year time cycles. I was commissioned to preach my warning messages around January 2005 when ministers in my church began to signal to me that preaching an astonishing event before lay members are never asked to preach during to God's warning message to the nations. 19 years since I was commissioned will be complete in January 2024. That's why God has held up the start of the Third World War now. After January 2024, Germany and China are free to start the Third World War anytime. They seem to have prepared for it already. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please continue to watch my videos on important world events, World War III watch, politics, international business, how Bible prophecy is fulfilling an important role in world affairs, advice on health and medical problems, and much more for in-depth and insightful analysis. Please also subscribe to my YouTube and Facebook channels Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini to view and get information on the latest videos.